Hey guys, and welcome back for today's video where I wanted to touch on some brand new polling data that was just released from the Morning Consult, taking a look at the national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary and comparing their post-New Hampshire results as opposed to where we were heading into New Hampshire. And we can see some clear shifting around in the number, and Bernie Sanders has now opened up himself a 10 percentage point lead over Joe Biden post-New Hampshire as that electability narrative is crumbling for the former vice president. That was a lot of the support that he had behind him, as many felt like he would be the toughest opponent to Donald Trump. But given how weak he's performed in Iowa and New Hampshire, those voters are starting to rethink their position and perhaps going behind some of these other options. So you have Bernie Sanders, who was able to just get a little bit past Joe Biden post-Iowa caucus. He was able to get a 3 percentage point lead, 25-22, but now post-New Hampshire, he has a 10 percentage point lead, 29-19. So Bernie gains 4 points after the New Hampshire primary, whereas Joe Biden loses 3 percentage points. And then you have Bloomberg, who picked up 1 point. He was at 17, now at 18. Buttigieg not getting much in the way of a boost, at least the data that we have to go off of. Only one poll nationally, but still nonetheless not the kind of boost that Pete Buttigieg was hoping for after what was a pretty strong showing there in New Hampshire, where he remains at 11%. Nationally, Elizabeth Warren takes a little bit of a step back. She loses 1 point. She was at 11. Now she is at 10. And then Amy Klobuchar, she also was able to get a boost up, but probably not as significantly as she was hoping for after that really great result that she had, surprising a lot of people with a very strong third place position, actually getting more vote than Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren combined. She goes from 3% up to 5%. And I've been talking about this in a lot of my post-New Hampshire discussions where I felt like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, it's great for their campaigns to have a bit more success in New Hampshire than maybe what some were expecting, but they still have serious concerns on the national stage, especially with trying to get minority voters to support their campaigns. They have very little in the way of minority support in comparison to some of these other candidates, and we'll see if that changes or not going forward. There's definitely been a bit more positive coverage on Buttigieg and Klobuchar after that New Hampshire result. This is just one national poll, so we'll see what kind of trend we get from other results here over the next week or so. But just interesting that they haven't gotten as much of an increase as what we've seen from Bernie Sanders, who's now significantly out in front with that 10 percentage point gap between himself and Joe Biden. And essentially, this is a flip between Sanders and Biden from what the Morning Consult national numbers have been for the better part of this past year, where Biden has consistently had at least a 10 or so point lead over Sanders, but now that is reversed after the first two contests where Sanders wins the popular vote in both Iowa and New Hampshire, whereas Joe Biden finishes in a rather distant 4th and 5th place, respectively, in those two contests. So then also some other interesting data that we have here, that electability that Joe Biden has been running on, that narrative has taken a big step back. So they asked the Democratic primary voters who they think has the best chance of beating Donald Trump in November. So post-Iowa compared to post-New Hampshire, Sanders gains 6 points in that respect, and voters think he has the best chance of beating Trump out of all the options, up there at 29%. Bloomberg gains 7 points at 25%, whereas Biden collapses here, loses 12 percentage points in what was a very important category for him, bringing in as much support as he had in the polls before we actually got into Iowa and New Hampshire, of course, was that electability argument, now down to 17%. Buttigieg gains a couple of points to 8%. Warren loses 4 points down to just 5%, and then Klobuchar gains a couple of points up to 3%. So some really interesting stuff going on, at least in the initial polling results. Post New Hampshire, we have the Nevada caucus coming up in a little over a week from now. We'll see what kind of shifting we get around in the data. I'd love to actually get some Nevada polls coming out. They've been few and far between, to say the least. But before making my final Nevada caucus prediction, I hope to at least have a little bit of data to work from. And then, of course, after that, we have the South Carolina primary, and then we head right into Super Tuesday as we turn the calendar over to the month of March. So going to be a very interesting time. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel to continue to get all coverage on this 2020 Democratic primary. And I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.